Okay, I think we will start. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar on Talis Aspire. Thanks for joining us today. The session is being recorded and you'll be sent the recording afterwards. I am joined by my colleague Juan from marketing, who is going to be our moderator today. And Juan will be checking for questions as we go along. So if you could add them in the Q&A box and we will answer them at the end. And also perhaps do say hello in the chat, introduce yourselves. It's always nice to know, for others to know who's attending, and perhaps put a note about why you're interested in joining the webinar today. I'm Helen Anderson. I am Development Manager at Technology from Sage, and I look after our Talis Aspire, Lean Library and SciWheel customers in the UK and the Netherlands. I'm joined by my colleague David Remfrey, who heads up our support team as Senior Success Consultant. And I'm also delighted to be joined by Kees van Gent, who is Head of Educational Support at Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam. And Kees is going to talk about their experiences of Talis Aspire at VU and talk about where Talis Aspire sits within their educational strategy. So a big thank you to Kees for joining us today. This is our agenda. I'm going to do a quick overview of Technology from Sage and our product suite. I'm going to touch on the benefits of Talis Aspire, and then David is going to pick this up with a demonstration of Talis Aspire, because we thought it would be useful to showcase the functionality so you can understand exactly what Talis Aspire is. And then Kees is going to pick up on their experiences at VU with Talis Aspire around their strategy around delivering resources. And then at the end, we'll have time for questions and answers. As I say, please do feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box as we go along. Hopefully you're familiar with Sage as a well-known provider of content in the area of social sciences, and I'm sure many of you will have Sage content as part of your library collections. In 2018, Sage's strategy was to acquire technology providers in the library and edtech arena to ensure that their delivery of content continued to be innovative and current, and to keep pace with emerging technologies. So at this time, Sage bought Talis, which was a company started in 2010 and actually introduced the concept of resourceless systems into the UK and subsequently internationally. So we were innovators in this area and continue to be that today. We also have Talis Elevate under the Talis brand, and Talis Elevate is a social collaboration tool, an annotation tool that helps students and lecturers engage with resources. So at this time, Sage also bought Lean Library. As many of you will know, this was a company that started in the Netherlands and is all about taking library content to the end user. In 2022, Sage bought a company called SciWheel, which has an authoring and citation tool that supports research outputs. So for a time after these purchases, Sage pretty much left the companies to work independently. And then at the end of last year, Sage brought all these products and the three companies together under the umbrella of Technology from Sage. So we spent quite some time sort of defining what our mission is at Technology from Sage. And we very much knew that we wanted to put the academic library right at the centre of our strategy. And this strategy feeds into all the departments at Technology from Sage. We place the academic library right at the centre of our strategy and support our customers as they increase the library profile throughout the institution, making library activity more visible to the educational and institutional management. So we really do believe that the right technology can remove barriers to knowledge, and we know that challenge that everyone's facing around delivering content to students, and how we can do it better, how we can improve delivery and make resources more available and more accessible. So across that technology from Sage Suite, we've curated these library technologies that improve every stage of the patron's workflow. So that goes from managing reading lists to discovering online resources and reference management. We would never say that you have to buy every single product in that suite. They're very much standalone products, but what we are looking at and what we're currently working on is bringing those products, the product suite together, and identifying commonalities across the products that will improve the workflows for librarians and their end users. You can imagine as well the amount of data that the use of these technologies generates. So this data is being used to gain greater insight into user activity, which then helps libraries make better decisions, and which can then be used to improve the end user's workflow further. And this data can also easily be shared throughout the institution. So it's all about gaining that greater insight into student and researcher activity and their learning habits. And again, increasing the profile of the library throughout the institution and to educational management. So this is really how we see our products sort of sitting together to support that patron workflow. So you could imagine that this is the underpinning of that whole undergraduate or researcher workflow, from discovering resources, whether that's guided discovery or more freer discovery, guided engagement using Talis Elevate, that prescribed reading and the curation from Talis Aspire, and then leading on to the independent discovery around Lean Library, and then with Cywheel finishing things off with that citation and that producing the actual research. So overall, we see our products supporting that patron workflow and helping to get the right content to students and researchers in the most efficient way, supporting them whether they're writing an essay, preparing for a seminar, or producing a piece of peer-reviewed research. But today we're going to focus on Talis Aspire, an online resource list management platform that fully integrates into your library ecosystem. So when David is demonstrating Talis Aspire, we very much look at it, we look at the benefits across three key user groups, this being lecturers, the library, and students. And across these three groups, Talis Aspire acts as a workflow management tool. So it's improving processes and practices around resource provision. It brings these three groups together and improves the experiences for all three groups. What we see with institutions implementing Talis Aspire is that there are often changes to library processes and practices, and even at times changes to teams and structures. So the library gets to be in a better position to support the curation and delivery of content to their users. So I'm just going to take a look at each of these groups, just to have a quick look at what those benefits are. Overall, Talis Aspire improves the experience for students when it comes to using resources in their learning. So most importantly, it's removing barriers to learning, whether this means, spending time searching for the right resource or not encountering broken links. And this reduces that cognitive load, ensures the student can concentrate on the work in hand. And this in turn helps with confidence, and it helps build robust academic skills. We've got a lovely quote from one of our students. They said this at one of our Technology from Sage Insight events earlier on in the year. They said, "I always know I'm starting my research in a good place if I can use a list already curated by my tutor. So this gives me confidence to start my assignments," which I think is a great quote, particularly as we've seen you know, first year students coming back to university after COVID and having that absence from, you know, more structured formal education. So benefits for lecturers. I think importantly, it makes sure that the resources they're used in teaching are embedded right in the heart of the course within the learning management system. And really important, it ensures that the resources are actually purchased, are actually acquired and available and accessible at the right place at the right time. It ensures that the correct edition is there, that the correct format is there to support teaching. And I think overall, it improves communication between lecturers and the library. And again, we've got a lovely quote, Hannah Groom at the University of Essex in the UK. She said, Talis Aspire results in conversations with faculty at a much earlier stage, and they see us as somewhere to come for more information on resources. And I really like this last bit. They know us more now because we talk to them so much more. In terms of libraries, Talis Aspire ensures courses are sufficiently resourced, so it ensures budgets are spent efficiently whilst ensuring that every student has the right resource at the right time. It puts the library right at the heart of the learning management system, so again increases the profile of the library by ensuring resources are visible at the place where we know all the activity happens in an institution, and that's within the learning management system. Again, a really nice quote here from a librarian user at University of East Anglia. Talis Aspire has allowed us to target our book purchases more closely with materials actually being used in teaching. And I think that's the key bit at the end, you know, and that does, you know, talk about a better use of budgets based around the actual use. And you can really see how Talis Aspire, you know, allows you to get those efficiencies and those benefits and that value for money by getting the most out of your resources. I think with presentations of this type, I'm always very conscious that it's very easy to say, oh yes, you know, value for money, better decision making. But when you watch David's demonstration, I really want us to be able to present what that actually means in reality. So there are multiple questions that Talis Aspire helps those three sort of end user groups helps answer to make those benefits apparent, you know, to make things efficient, to allow you to make better decisions, to allow you to use your budgets better. And these are things like, how important is the item? Are there any other editions? How many students need access to the item across all the lists? What items have we got in stock? How many copies do we have? What other formats have we got? Are there instructions from the faculty member? And most importantly, how will it cost? I think across those three groups, that also feeds in to benefits to the wider institution in the supporting of teaching and learning. So it's making the library more visible. It's that workflow, the workflow management tool, is bringing those three groups together around teaching and learning, and also making the library more visible to educational management. So before I pass over to David to start the presentation, I'm going to share this slide, which hopefully kind of indicates how central Talis Aspire is to the university ecosystem, because each of those systems are sort of integrating with Talis Aspire. Talis Aspire is feeding out to those systems. It's bringing everything together to improve the delivery of content. So you can imagine how those different systems would sit if it didn't have Talis Aspire bringing them all together. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to David, who's going to demonstrate what Talis Aspire is, the functionality around Talis Aspire.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Helen. I shall just attempt to share my screen and hopefully everybody is now staring at a Canvas page, which I'll explain in a moment. So good afternoon, everyone. As Helen said, my name's David Renfrey and I am Senior Customer Success Consultant here at Technology from Sage. A bit about my background so you know who you're dealing with. So I joined what was then Talis and is now Technology from Sage almost 6 years ago now. But before I joined the company, I actually worked as a librarian in higher education here in the UK for 17 years. So I've done quite a few different roles in that time, liaison librarian, systems librarian. I just mention all of that because I usually find that when we're speaking to library people who are looking at Talis Aspire, they find it quite reassuring that the person they're speaking to has actually sat in the place where they are and has some understanding of the challenges that they face. By the way, I'm battling a slight cold and sore throat today, so my apologies if that becomes clear as I'm speaking. So what I'm going to do for the next 20-25 minutes is just give you an overview of some of the main functions of Talis Aspire, so how it works and how we would expect some of those different groups that Helen identified, how we would expect them to actually interact with the system and what they get out of it. And I'll try and touch on some of the integrations that Helen mentioned as well as we go. So we're going to start with the students because obviously, you know, that's ultimately why we're all here. We're looking to support the students in their teaching and learning. And I'm going to start from within a Canvas page, which is what you're seeing on your screen at the moment. And the reason I do that is because we actually know from the logs that we maintain that it's about 80% of visits to Talis Aspire actually start from a click within your virtual learning environment, whether that's Canvas, whether it's Blackboard, whether it's Moodle, whether you're using Brightspace, something else. This is actually where your students usually begin their journey. So what we've got here, I've set up a very basic Canvas course, and you can see that, you know, there's a course handbook there. Perhaps the lecturer has uploaded some lecture slides, perhaps they've uploaded a questionnaire and all the other sorts of materials that you would expect to find within your virtual learning environment. And then towards the top here, we've got a thing that says module reading lists. And if I just click on that now, what it's going to do, it's going to take us in to a Talis Aspire reading list for this particular course. Just to explain for the technical people on the call, that integration is done by LTI 1.3, and that's the standard we uploaded to last year. So the student doesn't need to know that, but that's how this sort of conversation between the two systems is happening. And so what I've got on screen here now is a reading list for this particular course, and you can see it's still presented within the Canvas environment. So what has the student actually got access to here? So we can see at the top we have a title, so you know the student is reassured that they're in the right place. You can see it's for the current academic year, so 23-24, so again they know that they're accessing the right version. We've got a lecturer's name at the top, what we call the list owner, which in this case is myself, because this is a list that I demo from on quite a regular basis. We can see some information which I've chosen to provide about the reading list. So you can see, you know, this core module will form the basis of your understanding. So it's just giving them some context about what this list actually relates to. And then if we start to scroll down a bit, we get a bit more information. So there's an introduction here. We can see who is teaching it. We can see their contact details. All of these things are optional, which you may or may not choose to provide when you're actually creating the resource list. But what we hopefully have here is an example of a good one. And then there is some information here about how the student should be using the list. So students are not expected to read everything. Items are annotated, offering guidance. You are expected to tailor your own study. So even before I, as a student, have actually got to the resources that have been recommended for me, I've got some understanding of how I should be using this resource list that's been provided for me. And then if we go down a little bit further, we actually get to the resources themselves. So, you know, what is actually recommended for the students to be looking at. So you can see what we've got there. We've got a section that says essential reading. You can see we've got some nice looking book jackets. So, you know, what we're saying is, hey, this is a book and here's some details. You know, this is what it looks like. If I go down a bit further, you can see we've got an icon and this item is an article. If we go down a bit further, there's an icon for film camera. This is an audio visual item. We go down a bit further, there's an icon for chain, for a link. So this is a website. So what I've got for me as a student here is all of these different types of resources available to me within one platform, whether it's books, whether it's articles, whether it's videos or websites or whatever. And immediately I can see a little bit about these items. So I've got a title. This one, as I say, I can see is a book. I've got an author. I've got a date. We've also got what we call an importance. So actually, just excuse me a moment. I'm just going to do one additional click. At the moment, I'm not viewing it as a student. There we go. My apologies. We've also got what we call an importance. So you can see in this case, we've got suggested for student purchase, essential. There's some down here as recommended. These are customizable, so you can use whichever text it is you want to use. But what we're doing is we're sort of scaffolding this a little bit for the student, and we're saying, well, hey, this is something that maybe you want to look at. It's recommended. These are essential, so you really should be looking at them. This one up here, we've got marked as suggested for student purchase. As I say, what labels you use there is entirely configurable by what language you want to use. But we're giving the student some idea of expectations here. If I want to know more about any of these items, I can click on the title or this view availability button over here. And what that's going to do, it's going to expand this item for me and I can see a little bit more about it. So I can see all of the sort of citation information over here, all the sort of stuff that librarians like to provide to students. I can see that there is a note here, which the lecturer has left for me. So they've given me some context here as to why I should be reading this particular item. Why is it relevant to this course? And in this case, they've recommended that I read chapter 4. This one is actually a print item. And so I can see that currently there is one copy available of this item and it's shelved at this number here, 339.2. But of course, more and more, the resources you provide to your students are going to be available online rather than a print book sitting on a shelf somewhere in your library. So if I just shrink that one down, you'll see that a lot of the things that are following it have this view online button next to them. So this particular one I'm hovering on at the moment, I can tell you that's an ebook. So when I click on view online, it's just going to take me immediately into that item and I can start scrolling and reading. So it's one click away. I haven't had to go to the discovery layer and find this item. I just follow the link, I'm in, and I start my study. If I just go back to the list. So yeah, that's a very simple view of what this can do for students. You can view the list, you can view the different resource types, you can interact with them, you can click out and view them, there and then. But we've also built in some tools to make this a little bit easier for the student. So if I just shrink that down again a moment, you'll see that there are little buttons next to each of these little circles. These allow students to set reading intentions against these items. So these will be personal to the student who is using this list. And so perhaps, if I'm trying to manage my learning as a student, I might say, okay, this is an item that I will read. It looks interesting to me. This is something that I'm currently reading. This is something that I won't read for whatever reason. So what I'm doing as a student, I'm managing my own learning through the list so that the next time I come back and log into this, I've got a very sort of quick reminder of where I'm at with this, where my learning understanding is currently at. I can also interact with a lot of items on this list. So there's an action button over here next to all of these list items. I can add an item to my own personal collection of bookmarks. So yeah, I can't show you everything today, but one of the things that Talis Aspire allows you to do is you can actually build up your own collection of reading materials from, of course, all of the different courses that you're studying. So it might be that that's something I know I'm going to want to return to again in the future. I can add personal notes to each item. So I might want to say something like, this is really useful for assignment 1. Or it helped me understand this concept, or chapter 4 was what I found particularly helpful, or whatever it is I want to say. When I click on save, that note will be added to the list, and as the name suggests, it's a personal note. It's not visible to any of my classmates. It's not even visible to my lecturer, but it's just there for me as a student to remind myself, why this item was useful, why I might need to refer back to it. You can download any of the items within the list as a RIS file. So I don't know what reference managers you guys are supporting in your institutions. Maybe you're using EndNote or RefWorks or Mendeley or SciWheel or any of those. But you have the ability to download a RIS file for any of these items. What that will do is take all of the citation data directly from the bookmark. So everything you see here. And then when you upload that into the citation manager, you have the details. I have the ability to report a broken link. So, with the best will in the world, it happens sometimes. You're a student, you've seen a link on a list, it doesn't take you to where you want it to go. So I have the option there to report a link, and I can just hit report immediately, and that will send a message to the library with an inbox that they have defined. Or I can be helpful and add some more details. I got a 404 error or whatever it is I want to say. That will capture my email so that the library can get back to me when they fixed it. I also have the ability to share items. So each one of these items on the list also has its own individual URL. So perhaps I'm doing a group assignment. There is something I've found here that is particularly helpful, and I want 3 or 4 of my classmates to look at it as well. There's the ability to click on share item, copy that URL, and then I can drop that wherever it is I communicate with my fellow classmates, whether it's Twitter or chat software or whatever it is they're using. So yeah, I have lots of ways I can interact with this list as a student. I can expand the items, I can click on the links, I can leave reading intentions, I can leave notes, I can report broken links. I also have some navigation options at the top. So this particular list, I can tell you, because I demo from it quite regularly, is really quite long. It's like over 200 items, I think it is. Now, I'm sure that not all of your reading lists are that long, but you may have times when your list has become quite long, it's quite unwieldy. And so what I've got here is a table of contents, and I can very quickly zoom to, let's say I'm going to week 10, click on there in the table of contents, and it will immediately take me down to that spot in the reading list. So I can navigate my way up and down very quickly. If I want to go back to the top, there's a back to top button there, and immediately I'm back at the top of the list. I have some filters here. So perhaps I am the type of student that says, well, actually, I don't want to do reading. I would rather watch, something audio visual. I would like to, look at a YouTube video or a streaming video that my lecturer has recommended. So I can filter the list by item type and say, well, actually, just show me the things I can watch. That's what interests me. Or actually, I'm a book kind of student. Show me the books on the list. Don't show me the other resources. We've also got another filter over here, which you can use. So, you might want to filter the list by physical resources. Maybe I'm a student that works best when I'm sat in the library and I have a pile of books next to me. So just show me the physical stuff, things that's actually available, that I can pick up and leaf through. Or you might be working remotely. And so the fact that the library has 3 copies of this book on a shelf is no good to you. You can't access it here and now. So in that case, you could filter the list to online resources. Just show me the things that I can click on a link and access here and now. And we have other options. You can filter on those reading intentions I showed you a moment ago. So, what were the things I said I will read? Show me those. You could filter on the importances. So maybe I just want to see the essential items. I'm not going to look at the recommended stuff. Just show me the things I absolutely have to read for this course. And there are other filters there about filtering, on any personal notes you've left, or you combine them. So you could say, show me the items that are essential, that are books. So I can slice and dice this list in any number of different ways to very quickly drill down to the content that I, as a student, need to support my learning. You can also view the list in citation styles. And again, this area is entirely configurable, but these are the ones that we've set up for this test instance. So perhaps your institution supports Harvard. Show me the list in Harvard style. It will very quickly just sort of go back through the list, and all of those references will be displayed in that citation style that you've requested. So I'm just going to clear those filters and the citation style and just show you that, if all else fails, there is an old-fashioned search box at the top here. So maybe your lecturer recommended a particular author. You can't remember the name of the book, but you can remember who they were. Put their name in up here, and this is the title that you're probably interested in. And just to finish the student experience, We also have a view and export button at the top here. So again, as a student, I can view recent changes. This is a list that's being updated by my lecturer regularly throughout the year. I can export the whole list as a RIS file. So if I want to get all of the references in one go into my citation manager, I can do that. I can download the file as a CSV file if I just want all of the detail in the spreadsheet, or I can download it as a PDF, either as a list or as a bibliography. So we know that some students still like to have, like a printed version of the list. So exporting it as PDF just makes sure that when they come to print it, everything is formatted nicely, nothing goes off the end of the page or whatever. But that PDF is also interactive, so you can still click on the links with it to take you to the individual items, and there is a QR code you can scan to take you immediately back to the list. So in summary, for students, it's not just a list of resources, useful though that is. You also have all these other tools in terms of making notes, in terms of downloading RIS files, in terms of navigating at the top here, to make this a really interactive sort of learning resource. Okay, how am I doing for time? Not bad. Moving on to the next group that Helen identified. So obviously, this is what the student sees at the end. You're probably wondering how something like this gets built. So the good news is, when you come to build a reading list as a member of teaching staff, so put your lecturer head on now, we've moved on to how the lecturers will experience Talis Aspire. If I just click on this exit student view, which I set a moment ago, you can see now how the lecturers experience Talis Aspire. And actually, it's very similar. So effectively, when you come to build a list as a lecturer, you're generally building it in real time, and you can see your changes as they're made. The main difference you might notice is that I've now got this sort of this navigation bar following me up and down the screen, which is going to allow me to do some editing. And also some of the options over here have changed. So because I am now a lecturer viewing this list and not a student, I've got some additional editing options, which a student wouldn't see. So typically the theory behind Talis Aspire is that you will find material which will help you build a list, and then you will build it into the list. So how that would typically work, I'm just going to show you a couple of examples of bookmarking. You install a extension into your browser, and that's what this button up here is doing for me. And so what happens is, once you've installed that, you will go around the web finding resources that you want to use in your teaching. Now, in this instance, we're actually integrated with an OCLC WorldCat instance, which OCLC have provided to us. So what I'm doing here as a lecturer, I've come to the library catalogue, I've done a search for things that I think will be useful. Let's say I'm scrolling down, I find an item that I like the look of. What I'm going to do is click to take me to that item record. So this is within my WorldCat instance. I am then going to press the extension that I've installed. And what's going to happen is, Talis Aspire is integrated with your library catalogue. It's going to pull through all of the information about that item directly from your catalogue. So the information that you're seeing over here right now, this is actually coming from the MARC record for this item. So it's your own data that we're reflecting back to you at this point. And so you can see it's capturing, a title, the authors, the date, the ISBNs, publication place. Again, everything you would want for a citation. I click on create, and I've just created a bookmark that I can use in a list, which I'll show you in a moment. It's not just your library catalogue. We can bookmark from all sorts of different places, but I will just give you one other example. This is a Science Direct article that I've chosen at random. The process is the same. I'm going to click on bookmark or the extension, and it's going to pull me that detail through. Now, obviously, this probably hasn't got a catalogue record in your system. So what we will do for journal articles, we will actually look for a DOI, which we've been able to find here. And then if we found a DOI, we will take all of the data for this item and cross-ref, just to make sure that we are getting a decent citation and it's good quality material that's coming through. Some of you might have noticed, we've also picked up in this case that there is actually an open access version of this item available. So this is a workflow we've added in the last few months. And so at the point of creation, and this goes for other types of material as well, I can actually choose which of these linking methods I would prefer, whether that's DOI, whether that's the open access link, whether I want to go to the link resolver. Now, I know that a lot of your teaching staff won't be too familiar with the finer points of linking here, and you do have some ability to sort of set the default behavior for which routes to a material Talis Aspire will prefer. But hopefully that just gives you an example of some of the flexibility that you've got within the system. So in this case, I'm just going to choose DOI, click on create, and I've saved another bookmark. So what I do with those items as a lecturer, if we go back to our reading list, now you can edit lists from the Talis Aspire interface, but because I've embedded this list in Canvas, that doesn't actually stop me from editing it here and now. So if I just use this navigation bar that's following me at the moment, if I just click on add resource, these are the two items I bookmarked a moment ago. So you might recognize them from when I was clicking on the extension. I click on that first book I saved, and you can see it's pulled through all of the information about this book directly from the record. So all of the citation information is here. It's already generated a view online button because this item happens to be an ebook. And so all I need to do as a lecturer is set its importance, and it's done, and it's ready to go. And same thing goes for the journal article that we saved. I'm just going to add that to the list. I'm going to set an importance. Perhaps I might want to do some other things with these. We saw how some of the items on the list had notes for students. So as a lecturer, I have the ability to say something like, please read before the seminar, click on save, and that's added. And there are other options over here as well. So in terms of reordering the list, it's as simple as dragging and dropping to where you would like things to go. Or to make sure that we're being, sort of accessible, we also offer options under here for things like, well, let's cut that, let's paste it somewhere else, let's add a resource below. And all of these items can be navigated by a keyboard as well. So, you're not relying on a mouse to be able to use this system. I'm conscious of time and giving Case a few minutes to talk, so I'm just going to very quickly move on to the last group which Helen identified, which was the library, and what does the library get out of this? So we've seen how students can access a list. We've seen how lecturers can save material and start to build it into the list. When a list is complete, generally it will be sent to the library for what we call a review. And the review is where the library essentially gets to see all of the data that's been collected by Talis Aspire and uses it to filter into its acquisitions process. So this is now a reviews area of Talis Aspire. So this is something that only your library staff are ever going to see. This is not something that your students or lecturers will know about. And this is what a list looks like in review. So what's happening here, left-hand side of the screen is all of the different items that appear on the list. Right-hand side is information about each of those items to help you make an acquisitions decision. So you'll see that as I click on the different list items, that right-hand side of the screen is updating. So what you've got here, this is an item which was recently added to this list as being reviewed. I know that because it says new. So it's immediately drawing my attention to it because this is something that the library hasn't had sight of before. I can see the title of the book. I can see its importance. So immediately that might have an impact on my library's policy because, something that is essential, you might be more likely to buy it than if it was marked as recommended. I've got a lot of citation information here. So if I need to place an order for this item, these are all the details I need to give to my book supplier. The system is flagging to me that there are later editions available. So if I just click on there, this is an integration with Nielsen Book Data. We know that there are various editions of this title out there in different formats. The one in bold, which is on the list, is from 2015 and is held by the library because there's a tick over here. Actually, there are later editions of this title available. There's a 4th edition, there's a 5th edition. So when you're reviewing the list from the library's point of view, you might say, well, we'll purchase a version of this, but we'll get the 5th edition and we'll get an ebook. We can see notes that were left for the students. We can also see notes which are left for the library. So academics, when they're building a list, also have the ability to send notes to the library. We can see how many students need access to this book for this course, but we can also see if it appears on other lists. So 25 students need access to this course that's being reviewed. However, it appears on 2 other lists, and so maybe that's going to factor into my purchasing thinking. I can see that I have a copy available at the moment, just 1 copy in my library. I can also see how much it would cost me to buy additional versions from various different book suppliers that I have integrations with. So I don't think you guys have Brown's Books in the Netherlands, but they're a UK supplier. And if I wanted this item, this is how much it would cost me for the various editions. When all of that is done, I can set an outcome. So again, these are configurable, but I might decide that having viewed the costs, how many students need access and all the rest of it, I might say, well, actually, we've got enough stock for this particular item. I could click on save, and that is saved in this workflow area here, so that over time you're building up an audit trail of which items have been reviewed, who reviewed them, and decisions that were taken against them. There are also some filters over here. So in the same way that you can filter a list, you can also filter a review. So when you're building your workflows around this, you might say, well, actually, we're just going to review the books that are on the list. You know, we're not interested in the article links. We're going to assume that they're okay. Or maybe your policy is, well, actually, we're only going to purchase the things that are marked as essential. You know, if they're just marked as recommended, that's up to the students. So there are different areas here that you can filter the list to make this review easier. There is a whole lot more I could say, but I think I'm probably reaching the limit of my time already. So hopefully that has given you a bit of an insight into some of the different ways that different groups will access Talis Aspire. And yeah, I'm sure if there are questions, then we'll be happy to take those at the end. But at that point, I think I should probably stop talking, Helen. Case, do you want to take over?
Thanks, David.
Yeah, I want to take over, and I'm going to share my screen. Good afternoon, everybody. Helen, can you give me a thumb if you're seeing my screen right now? You're all seeing my screen?
Yes,
Yes?
Case, we can see it. Yeah.
A little bit of a background from me. I saw you in the chat. In the chat. Some names and some people know me, but I will introduce myself to the other ones. I'm Kees van Gent. I work for the University Library at the Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam. And the reason why I'm here is that, well, I'm not a librarian, but I stepped over from educational support. I was head of educational office of the Faculty of Sciences until 2019. And suddenly I thought I had to do something else with my life. So I stepped over to library support. As I said, I'm not a librarian, but when I walked around over there, I saw things I thought, well, this maybe could be better organized. And one of my first assignments was to step into the work group of SURF, which was creating the copyright tool at that moment. So I became part of the team, and SURF it's now a SURF service. From June this year on, so everyone can use it in higher education in the Netherlands, the copyright check tool we developed. And when I was working with that working group, somebody from the Faculty of Social Sciences came up to me and said to me, how does the library support reading lists? And I was in education for more than over 15 years, and I haven't heard anything about reading lists while working as a head of educational support services. And now the first time I heard when I was working for the library, I heard that for the first time. And at that time, nobody was interested. It was 2019, nobody was interested. and suddenly something happens in the beginning of 2020, and we had to organize education on a different way. And at that time, I was part of the Center for Teaching and Learning. And Center for Teaching and Learning at the Vrije Universiteit started in 2017, and it was the university library was the founder, among other people, of the Center of Teaching and Learning. And now in the Netherlands, Center of Teaching and Learnings are very they are putting their nose against the window, because everyone can gain a lot of money when they start a Center for Teaching and Learning in higher education. It's the NPULS was responsible for that. And in that Center for Teaching and Learning, first, in the beginning of 2020, we started to rearrange and reorganize and reshuffle and redesign all the education, of course, because we had to go online. And we started to talk, how can we provide literature better to students? And that's when at that time I met Paul Dibble. It was November 2020. And Paul worked for Talis, and he explained everything what David just explained to us. And I was very excited when I heard that. And also the people who came up to me and asked me, why don't we have a reading list management system, were also very excited. And it was 2020. We're now in 2023. And as it is at a university, one step at a time. So this year, we started to provide reading lists live reading lists to education. We have a few reading lists environment where lecturers can create their own few reading lists. But how did it start? Well, some history again. In the Center for Teaching and Learning, we work with innovative technologies or innovative educational visions as blended learning. And on this very moment, we are working on, for about 25-30 subjects. Some of them are presented over here. And the last 4 subjects are my subjects. So I have to inform the education about the use of open educational resources. I have to inform them about the use of a reading list management tool. Of course, I have to inform them education. I have to inform them about the use of copyrighted material. And our main goal is to inform them about the use of open educational resources, and they are a part of them can be found at 80 sources. And in all those 3 technologies, we work together with Talis, we work together with Surf, and we use their technologies to create a vision. And that's what Helen said. The Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam has a vision on how to stimulate the use of open educational resources by the use of available technologies. And I'm going to take you to the next slide. And I'm going to take you in the educational design process for a lecture. Of course, the lecturer first has to find educational resources, and the lecturer has to decide if he or she wants to use those educational resources. And if he found the educational resources, then you have to make them available to students. The Dutch higher educational law says, for example, that every required type of content has to be provided in a study guide. So how do you make those resources not only available to students in their virtual learning environment, but also how do you provide those information in a study guide? And how, if it is found, an educational resource, where is it found, and how do you make a connection to that resource? And the next slide I'm going to show you is how we organize it with the technologies provided to us. And if the educational resources is made available to students, how do we check if that is on the right copyrighted way? So those are questions, those 3 questions: finding, making available, and checking. Therefore, we need, of course, we need the things as Talis Aspire providers. If you have managed to organize this part well, then you will receive reports from Talis Aspire, and you will receive reports from a copyright check tool. And in those reports, the reports tells you what kind of resources are used, what infringements are made, and you get an overview on what is used by education. And if you have an overview of what is used by education, you're also able to go for a search for alternative educational resources as open access, or maybe open educational resources on EduSources. And when you have organized it on this way, then you end with your vision, and you start with your vision again by stimulating the use and creation of open educational resources. So this was where I was thinking about, and the tools helped me with it. If a lecturer is searching for educational resources, is going to a browser. He's browsing for information on the internet. And when you have installed the Lean Library tool in your browser, the extension in your browser, it gives you information on the availability of literature in your WMS, in your own library management system. The yellow part I'm not going to tell you about in this. I'm going to tell you about in a few seconds. If you have found those available literature, you can add it to. You have to make it available to your students, and that's where Talis Aspire or our reading list comes up. And if you have provided to the students those educational resources, then you have to check if it is copyrighted, if it is used in a copyrighted way. And there we use Serve Copyright Check and that they check the copyrighted learning materials. But all this, Lean Library, Talis Aspire, Serve Copyright Check, all those tools are supporting, of course, education, but education is free to do whatever they want to do with all this literature. There are no regulations for them to tell them you have to organize it on this very way, on this special way. So, as I told you, I was a head of educational support services at the Faculty of Sciences. And one of my main interests over there was educational logistics. How do you organize your education on a good way and thinking about logistics. And to organize that, we use er zit een hoop Nederlanders, dus ik kan het even in het Nederlands zeggen. Een uitvraag academische structuur. What does the academic structure needs to organize education? And it's called Ask Me. It's a Dutch company, and they provide this solution to several higher education institutes. And what does that tool do? It asks education on how they want to organize their education. So is this the course in your education? What lectures, what schedule do you need, and all this stuff? And one of the questions is which required literature do you need to organize your education? And this information is going on this very moment. This information is going to the study guide. But if you have gathered that information in that Ask Me tool, you can also add it to Talis Aspire. You can add it to every other with LTI. You can add it to every other tool to provide that information to students. So I'm now in contact, and Talis Aspire is also in contact with Ask Me to create this this kind of ecosystem. And how does that work technically? Oh, if you organize it very well, these are the benefits, of course. It reduces costs, gives you insights, creates awareness. And if you create this ecosystem for your own institute, I think you can say the same thing to your library management and to your educational management. Right. These are the benefits for education. You have better access to open learning materials, no infringements anymore. More and effective library support and clearer information for the students. But how is it organized technically? In the WMS, there we find all our literature. Ask Me asks WMS which required literature is necessary to organize the education. And if they gathered it in Ask Me, they give the same information to the study guide, and there's presented to students. But also you can add those required literature to Talis Aspire. And maybe on an automated way, a reading list is created. We don't have a solution for that yet, but we want to create on an automatic way the creation of reading lists in Talis Aspire by sharing the information which is found by Ask Me. The required literature reading list is add into the VLE as what David showed us, and when the literature is in the VLE, the copyright check is monitoring if it is presented on the right way. And as David showed us a few moments ago, you can add in the VLE, you can add all the other content you want to present to students in the VLE, let's call it recommended literature, and add it to Talis Aspire. That information gives you insights on what you need as library management, what you need as education management. So I think this ecosystem is, or we call it the landscape. I think this is, if you are able to integrate this in your as a library in your support to education, I think you create a big step for yourself. Thank you.
That's brilliant, Case. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Case. No, that's really interesting. What we hope to have done today was sort of show you the sort of practical aspects of Talis Aspire in terms of, you know, how your staff would use it, but also very much set it into the broader, more strategic aspects of how it can contribute to that educational strategy around improving the delivery of resources, including open educational resources. So hopefully we've done that. I do believe we've got no questions in the chat. Is that right, David?
So, sorry, I've just been chatting to Juan. I'm not sure if the Q&A is available to everyone, but I think, Juan, can you confirm that people should be able to unmute themselves and ask questions? Is that correct?
Yes. So, oh, we do have one in the chat, actually, just come through.
We have, yes. Okay. Does Talis Aspire also have a feature to engage into content? So yeah, we didn't really touch on that today, but Helen mentioned Talis Elevate at the beginning of our presentation, which is another sort of separate standalone product. We could almost do another webinar on itself on that. But yeah, if you wanted to know more about Elevate, Helen, I'm sure you'd be able to provide them with information.
Yeah, so I mean, the great thing about Elevate is you've got sort of Talis Aspire curating the content and delivering it to the students, but what you get with Talis Elevate is then encouraging engagement and use of that actual content between the lecturers and the students, and again that sort of builds confidence, etc., and the actual engagement becomes even more valuable possibly than the actual resource itself. It's a very simple thing that you engage within the content, whether it's a chapter from a book, a journal article, or a YouTube video. But as David said, that it's a separate tool. There are some integrations across the two, and obviously it's part of our ecosystem, and that's where we're hoping to sort of complete the circle, you know, deliver the resources and engage with the resources. But it's pretty much a standalone product really at the moment. But happy to share more about that with you. So given time, I think we need to bring the webinar to an end. We will follow up with an email. It'll have contact details in. If you'd like more information or separate conversation, I'm sure Case would be happy for you to reach out to him. We will share email addresses, and myself and David, and happy to take up further conversations there. So I hope this has been helpful. Thank you ever so much. Thank you to Case and David and Juan for helping deliver the webinar, and hope to speak to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.